I shouldn't be here. When I was 2, a riding lawnmower accident nearly took my life and changed it forever. Today I'm opening up about that story. I've gone back and forth on whether or not to share this story, partially because it's sacred, and largely because I know a lot of people will think that I'm just doing it to gain attention or clicks. But in reality, it doesn't really matter what other people think, because this story is a part of who I am. And Yah didn't save me just so that I could keep quiet about it. If you've been around for a minute on my channel, we typically have been covering deep exegesis of Hebrew and Greek and what the Bible actually says about women. And while I'm extremely passionate about this topic, it is one of the many facets that God is working through my life. I can dissect theology all day long, but if you don't know the fire that forged it, who I am, why I say live out loud, you'll only have half of the picture. Posted this short about walking barefoot because I'm low-key in my hippie mom era with my grounding barefoot shoes, and I like to walk barefoot outdoors. This comment won the internet to me. And I thought, it gives context to who I am. So let's talk about the lawnmower, the accident. What I remember is I do have some vivid memories of the actual accident. Sometimes it's hard to recall what is actual memory of mine and what is superimposed memory based on details that I have been told. But there are a few pieces that I know are my memory. But you'll get an idea of what is really my memory because I'll likely talk about it more vividly. We were young. My parents had a rule. Go do XYZ, report back to me. Go pick up your toys, report back to me. Didn't matter what it was. Go complete something and report back to me, which gave us the ability to complete a task, check back in, because the likelihood that they would say, okay, now go play, was pretty high. So my dad told me to go do something, and I don't remember what he told me to go do. All I remember is that I went inside our little house in Iowa and I was reaching up a bookshelf towards something on a higher shelf that I couldn't reach. And he had told me to go report back to my mother. Well, my mother was busy washing everybody's feet in the sink. I have 3 siblings, 2 older, 1 younger. My younger brother was in his bouncer and my older 2 siblings were getting their feet washed. So I thought, I'm a good little 2-year-old. Why don't I just go report back to my dad because she's busy? And so I went back outside and slipped while my father was backing up on the riding lawnmower. This was back in the day when they didn't have the automatic shut off for the blades when you're backing up. Some of those features have become what they are because of stories like mine. So he backs up and doesn't see me there and runs over me. I don't really remember this portion of the event. From what I've talked to my parents about, like, my dad vividly remembers the sound, which I can't even imagine. And then my mother remembers his blood-curdling cry and running out to attention. My next memory is when I'm on the roof of the car. They've called Flight for Life. They're trying to get paramedics on the scene. They're trying to keep me conscious so that they don't lose me. I tell my mom, Mommy, I think I need a Band-Aid. And she's like, oh, honey, you need a lot more than a Band-Aid. My dad is applying pressure to my leg, because that was what was run over, was my right leg. So much pressure just to try to keep the blood from pouring. And he later finds out that's what saved my life, because without that pressure I would have completely bled out. In fact, I had so much trauma to my leg that the paramedics that got there with the Flight for Life did not think I was going to make it to the hospital. They didn't tell them that in the moment, and my mom gets in the sheriff's car and they're going over 100 miles an hour to get to the hospital because he knows that they don't think that I'm going to make it, because I'd lost so much blood at that point. My dad has to stay behind because there's still small children in the home. He eventually makes his way there too. Long story short, the surgeons were incredible. I go through numerous surgeries in that first month in the hospital. There are bits and pieces that I remember. The most vivid memory I have is being loaded into the helicopter on one of those rolly beds and having an oxygen mask. I vividly remember the oxygen mask fogging up with my breath, being rolled into the helicopter and having people hustle and bustle around me. My eyesight started to get kind of like fuzzy and out of focus as the door to the helicopter was closing and we were taking off, and then I passed out. Fast forward, I'm in the hospital for like a month. I remember waking up and having all of these little yellow sticky things all over my chest, and there being like a weird texture and a weird smell to them. I remember laying in the hospital bed with my foot elevated clear to the ceiling with all sorts of hardware going through it. And for whatever reason, I remember there being a banana, a sippy cup with apple juice, and a green card with 3 balloons, one red, one blue, and one yellow, with a little teddy bear holding it next to me. And like all of these stuffed animals everywhere. After I got out of the hospital, after my initial release was really close to my 3rd birthday, and I remember being in the wheelchair and my older brother and sister fighting over who got to bring me my next gift, because they were like on the hearth or on the mantle of the fireplace, and they would each go pick one and bring it to me to open. And it was just such a precious memory to me because they're fighting over who gets to go give me the next gift. Then I was in and out of the hospital for years and years and years and years and years. I learned how to live inside these bounds. Like, the difference between a walker and crutches is the difference between a beater and a Ferrari, because you can go way faster on crutches. I learned how to run in crutches. And naturally, I would give my mom heart attacks because as soon as I was done recovering from a surgery, I'm like 20 feet up in a tree, like living life as a little kid. And then the next year, I'm back into the hospital and, wash, rinse, repeat. The hardest part for me, because think about it from my perspective, I'm 2 years old. Basically, everything that I've ever known in my life up to the age of 13 was going in and out of surgeries. That was my normal. And then I hit 13 and I go back to the Shriners. And they tell me that they didn't think I was going to need another surgery. And I was befuddled. It wasn't a bad thing. It's something to be celebrated. And the weird part is, it was one of the harder life transitions for me because my normal suddenly completely changed. This idea of comfortable discomfort. And like, we get so comfortable in our life situations that even if a different situation is objectively better, a lot of us want to stay in that discomfort because it's known. And the fear of the unknown keeps us from moving into bigger and better spaces. I had to face this right at like middle school era years, which is a weird time in everybody's life. I've always identified with lions. They've always been like a symbol for me, a symbol of strength, a symbol of pride, a symbol of unity, of like family structure, of overcoming, of like bravery and courage. And I used to make my bedroom closet like a den, and I remember sitting in that bedroom closet at 14 years old, extremely depressed and suicidal, which you would not have known if you knew me, because my middle name is Joy, and that's what I was known for. I was very jubilant. I lived life to the fullest every time that I could, and yet sometimes the most honestly depressed people are the ones with the biggest smiles. Now, I have since then learned that this wasn't just a me thing. This is a spiritual thing attached to my lineage, because numerous people in my family history have struggled with suicidal ideation and depression. So I now know this was not just a me thing. Like this is something that's attached to my bloodline spiritually. But I remember when I was 14 and I was starting to fall into that trap of victimhood and self-pity, sitting in my closet by myself, just ruminating and processing. And I used to say stuff like, who could ever love a cripple? That was how I talked to myself. And I remember Holy Spirit just pricking me and telling me, I didn't save you for nothing. What you have is a gift. You need to act like it. And it wasn't in a way that made me feel shameful, because anytime I've really received Holy Spirit, he always leaves me feeling seen, even when he's correcting me. But I remember in that moment, he presented me with a choice. You will either choose to be a victim and everything that comes with that, or you can choose to be a victor and to take what I've given you and to use that to your advantage and to live the life you have to the fullest. And so I decided in that moment I was not going to be a victim. And it's hard because even in my normal of going in and out of the hospital, like, kids aren't nice. A lot of kids aren't very nice, especially when you grow up disabled and disfigured. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Bullies are everywhere, and they're especially prevalent online nowadays. When you put yourself online, bullies are extremely prevalent, which I've had to work through a lot of that fear of man just having a public YouTube channel. And I'm not even that big yet, and it still bothers me, which is kind of the point. That's what Holy Spirit is teaching me in this season, is your fear of me and what I'm asking you to do needs to be bigger than your fear of man. So I'm doing this YouTube channel, walking out in faith, because I believe it's what y'all wants me to do. In different ways, we all have to face that question, though. Are we going to choose to play into the victimhood mentality, or are we going to choose to be grateful that we have a life to live at all? Because there's always someone out there that's doing worse than you are. Always. I think about how tough my story was, and I knew a gal who was literally trafficked as a child. Comparatively, I would rather have my story. Like, that sucks. And yet she decided that she was going to live a life that she was proud of. There was actually one of those big eye-openers for me is after I had this conversation with Holy Spirit, he was starting to bring influences into my circle to help teach me how to live that out better. And one of those was I followed a dog trainer called Sean O'Shea with The Good Dog. I had a whole dog business trading into my 20s, and that's another story for another day as to why I really retired my business, and especially because I had said that I always wanted to be a dog trainer since I was 12, and part of that was rooted in hurt from people. If people weren't going to accept me, then I wanted to spend my time with animals because they didn't care what I looked like. They weren't mean. But I was following this trainer, Sean O'Shea with The Good Dog, which if you have dog problems, he's a good place to start. I still really like his work. There's a lot of trainers that I still really follow and appreciate. So if you need dog training advice, just hit me up and I can point you in the right direction, because there's a lot of nonsense out there. Talk about politics, my God, the dog world is extremely political. But like I said, this is a different story for another day. I could tangent all day long. Anyways, Sean O'Shea had a list of self-development books that he recommended, and he was talking through a lot of the stuff that I was working through, which was victim mentality versus victor mentality and choosing to live a life that you're proud of. And out of his list of books, there was one called The Success Principles, I think. I'll throw it up somewhere on the screen. I remember that being life-changing for me at the time. That was the first self-development book that I read. It was like one of my first steps into that process of growth. And I have Sean O'Shea to thank for that, because he's the first one that really exposed me to some of that literature. And it was life-changing for me as a depressed 14-year-old who didn't know what her purpose was in life, like any of us ever know what our purpose is. Holy Spirit's been telling me recently, I want to play hide and seek. Will you play hide and seek with me? Go see if you can find me in furniture flipping, in YouTube, in singing, in public speaking, in your workouts. Like, try to uncover me here, 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 and here. And then as I go and pursue him in those different areas and I use my work as worship, he is pointing me, directing me into how to share that, if to share that, X, Y, and Z. Which is, again, what I'm doing on this YouTube channel, is just living out loud what he has asked me to talk about. I'm in just a season of seeking and learning and being refined, and I don't know where he's going to ultimately use that, because I'm such a multi-passionate person. I have so many things that I'm interested in talking about. Biblical exegesis is one of those things. Personal development is another. I really enjoy public speaking as well. Like, all sorts of different avenues of teaching I'm interested in, and trying to figure out practically how to fit that into a YouTube algorithm or Instagram or TikTok. Sometimes I don't know like what he wants me to talk about and where he's going with this whole thing. I'm just doing it in faith. And sometimes that's all you can do, is lean into that peace that surpasses understanding. To seek it, ye shall find. Right? That's how I try to live my life out loud. It's not just about being a loud extrovert, because let's be honest, I put the extra on extrovert, okay? But it's about not being ashamed of my values and the blueprint that, like, the individual that God made Kinsey, and allowing myself to follow where Holy Spirit leads, regardless of what men think. So that's what I'm doing here on this channel, and that's my story of how I got to where I am today. And I think it's beautiful and it's poetic that something that could have killed me, God has used to create a testimony, and that the person in my family, me, that almost died, was the first to bring in new life. I have 2 beautiful children now, and I'm sure our family will continue to grow as Holy Spirit leads. So thank you, friends, for letting me share this story of mine with you. It's really shaped who I am and how I view things, especially victimhood versus being a victor, and trusting that all things work out for God's good. It's a little different than the typical content that I've been doing. You haven't seen it and you're interested in what God actually says about women in the Bible, and how the Bible supports equality between men and women, and how that's empowering to both men and women. You can check out that playlist. It'll be linked somewhere here on the screen. What would you like to hear next? Would you prefer that I go back into some more biblical exegesis, or that I talk a little bit more intimately about the specific spiritual encounters that I have had, the different demonic attacks that I have encountered, and how those have brought me closer to God and Holy Spirit? Or a different facet of my life that I'm interested in, such as public speaking or entrepreneurship or different things like that. There's a lot of different areas that we could go here, and I'm interested in you as my viewer as to what you would like to hear me talk about next. Until next time, remember to test everything and hold fast to what is good. May Yah bless and keep you. May he make his light shine upon you and give you that peace that truly surpasses all understanding. I'll catch you on that flippity flop. Shalom.